Hello everyone. Thank you all very much for coming out tonight. Pretty solid turnout. For those of you who don't know me, my name is James. I'm the current president of the Abertay Game Development Society, and tonight we are very pleased to welcome Sonia, who is going to give us a presentation on her upcoming project, Vote for Two. I think. Yes. So, this week, as I said, we've got the guest presenter, we've got Q&A afterwards, and if we have time, we will try and squeeze in a couple of presentations for your normal projects. I'm afraid we probably won't be able to get to many of you, if any. So if not, we'll try and squeeze you in next week. But next week is also quite busy because next week we've got Mr. Stuart Reed, who's going to come in and give a presentation, who is the founder and technical lead at TSA, which is a local studio here in Dundee. The week after that, we'll be having Paul Robertson in. Many of you know him. He's a lecturer with the cool hair. He'll be talking about some of the work he's been doing at the Perth Museum with interactive games. Should be really good. And then the week after that will be the final week for GDS, which will be post-mortems. For those of you who don't know, this is just when you analyze your project, whether it failed or whether it succeeded, and you analyze what went well and what went wrong and where you can improve in the future. So even if your game never really got off the ground, please feel free to come along. Even if your game is fantastic and you're going to win Dare to Be Digital, please come along and share that with us if you'd like. So, just a quick reminder, badges have been ordered. They're taking slightly longer than expected to arrive. We're hoping to have them for next week, at which point we will hand them out based on the list of just who's in the society. So if you haven't paid your pound yet, you're only, 2 months late. But I've posted the tutorial on the
pinned as well.
Sorry?
Pinned, so it's the first link on the Facebook group.
Yes, it's pinned on the Facebook group. So if you're having any trouble navigating the SA website, just check that. And if you're still having trouble, you're a game developer. Yeah. Shirts and jackets, I see we've got quite a few people have ordered already. Next week, Thursday the 27th, will be the last day that we accept orders, because the next day is when we will be placing said orders. We will be accepting cash payments for this, so if you want one, then you can give your money to ideally Alan, who is the treasurer, directly. Don't get too excited. Or you can give it to me and Emily, along with your name and student number, or an email address as relevant, and we'll pass it on to Alan effectively. And we'll get those ordered lickety-split and get them in as soon as possible. Remember, you can order either a jumper, a unisex shirt, or a female cut shirt, which is right, and should be good. So, just before we start, a couple of announcements, or just reminders really. Chill Jam will be taking place in Edinburgh on the 12th and 13th of November. It'll be a series of various workshops and stuff, and I believe it is just a normal game jam. Apart from that, should be good. I plan on going because I can crash with my sister. She lives in Edinburgh. And then upcoming next week in the Vision Building here in Dundee, GDS Scotland will be giving a very good presentation. If you haven't checked that out already, there is a link on the Facebook group. I'll be attending, but tickets are limited, so I suggest you act now if you haven't already. Okay. I would like to quickly invite Emily up. She will be giving us a couple more presentations, and then we'll get right to it. A couple more reminders.
Several presentations. You will stay here for hours. Oh, where is it?
It's in the folder.
Oh, there. I'm going to talk about Animex very quickly. It's a conference that this year was held in February. Next year they're moving it to May. As I say, Animex, I say February to Sunday. It's a really nice conference. It's by Teesside University in Middlesbrough, and they have a focus on animation mainly, but they have 2 days of conference where it's just games, like game people, and focus on that. So they haven't released any form of information about next year's speakers, but this year's speakers were Austin Wintory. You may know him from Journey and Absu and Banner Saga. He did also music for Assassin's Creed Syndicate, I think. And Christine Fallon at Bob talked about VR, so all you VR people. She was very cool, very very nice looking as well. Ken Wong, who was the lead designer on, and now I just lost the name, Monument Valley. Emil Kraftling from Avalanche Studios in Stockholm talked about environmental narrative, and Derek Sakamoto from Blizzard. He doesn't need a presentation. he talked about the UI in Hearthstone. Roll Barbette, who worked on that game that I now lost the name of as well. French. Nick, help me.
What's the name of it? The game with the two teenage girls.
Yes, Strange. Everybody knew. It's a lot of interesting talks. It's 2 very, very intensive days. And during the first evening of the conference, with the game part, there's a networking event, so you are able to actually grab a drink with these guys and sort of talk and ask questions and stuff like that. But it's always open for QA in the end of all their talks, and it's perfectly organized. They're very nice at T-side and so on. The thing that I'm bringing it up so early, since it's 22nd to 26th of May next year, is that these are the prices that they had for this year, and I know it's a lot of money, but that's why I'm bringing it up this time, because I want to talk with the T-side University and see if we can get a better price. I want to talk with hotels close by to the university and see if we can get a nice group discount if we're a big group. Bus is organized by the SA. If we want to go and we tell them in due time, they are able to help us get that fixed with the bus driver and everything, and they will help us with how to manage that and how much it will cost and stuff like that. I also tell you now, because by the 22nd, 26th of May, I don't know which of these days are for the game conference, you will need to know that this is the end of the term. You will be up to here in coursework. So this is if you can feel like you can manage to organize and sort of plan your schoolwork and stuff like that, so you can get those days off. I imagine it not being from the 22nd to the 26th. I imagine it being like 2 days out of these. So just show of hands, is this something that people would be interested in if I would look at it more and get more specific numbers and money, so you can put money aside and plan for going to this? Is this something that overall would be interesting? Well, it's at least 15 people, so I'll look into this and sort of see if I can get more specific amounts from them, and see if they can give us a better discount than just 10%. So, cool peeps? Cool peeps.
I think the time is the 5th of May, so I think the time is the 5th of May, so you should have already been done.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh!
I think that's really good by the time.
Oh, that's perfect. By the 5th, you'll be free.
Round of applause for our guest speaker, Sonia.
You can clap afterwards, it might be a big failure, but anyway. It's a nice way of encouraging me. Okay. So, before I start talking about the boat, and I would like to introduce myself, and first off maybe thank James and Emily for inviting me. I'm quite new to Abertay, so I think I'm going to look. Oh, I know some of the faces, but they're not part of the student body. No, I don't know that many of you. A few. So I've been at Abertay since May, and this year I teach spatial constructs. so third years, and professional context and entrepreneurship with fourth years. But what do I do? Like, how did I find myself here and what my background is? My background is actually in arts and humanities and literary studies. That was years ago in my MA times. Then I got interested in hypertext literature, which was already quite close to the digital realms of games. And then I hopped with my PhD dissertation onto researching play characters and role-playing games. Today, I do things that are slightly different. So there's two parts of me. One part of me you will get to know a little bit today. So the first part is concerned with theoretical research in topics like ludification of culture, flavor, citizen science games, automation of play, and big data and games, more from a media theoretical perspective. And the second part is a very practical and creative part, and I think this has always been like that. So today I will talk to you not about the media theoretical research ideas, but about this more creative side of me. And yeah, vote for two. You will see what that is. When you mentioned post-mortem, I actually thought this applies a little bit to myself, because the funny thing is, as you know, some projects are mismanaged, and it might be one of them. I still believe in it. I think it's maybe not a great game, but a great poetic, ludic experience. It has been developed actually in 3 months, but then it has been put on the shelf for a year. More about it later. I hope I will be able to revive it and bring it to App Store finally, so that you can actually play it. I have some videos though, so I'll be able to show you. Okay. Right, so games and poetry. This is how I will start, and you might wonder, what do those two have actually in common? And in order to unwrap it a little bit, I will start with those three issues. So the first thing is actually quite self-explanatory, which is the playfulness of language and form. Language itself, even the everyday language we're using, sometimes tends to be very playful. In the case of poetry, the playfulness is inherently there. Whether you think about the metaphors or the form itself, and I will unpack this in a few seconds. Then playfulness of natural language and code. There has been quite recently quite interesting developments in combining natural language with code. How many of you are programmers here? Like, oh, great. How many of you have ever written a poem or write poems secretly? Perfect. I think we might have another game jam. They're called poetry slams. So who knows? And the third thing is, and this is where Vote for Two actually taps in, is the playfulness of the digital ludic form. I gave it a fancy name, but basically what I mean is, well, games or digital games, 3D navigable worlds, and poetry, how to bring those two together. Has it been done before? And how did I and the team, how did we actually try to put those things together, and actually why? So just to prepare you a little bit for both the playfulness of language and the form, and maybe just to inspire you a little bit. So obviously I picked on the side of the form something that's called concrete poetry, and concrete poetry. This is quite a modern concept from 1950s, but as everything usually goes way back in time. You can also think about it as visual poetry, shape poetry, pattern poetry. What it does basically is it focuses or it combines the content of the poem, although the word content is so difficult, doesn't even fit here, but it combines the thought carried in the poem and the visual side of it. And that example here, for instance, is a shape poem called Wings in ancient Greece, and it dates back to more or less the 4th century before Christ. So some of the ideas are really new, You might think of the digital medium as something inherently new, but they're not. And this is where some of the examples, as far as playing or playful poetry is concerned, I would like to want you to bring in. This is an example of, or two examples of source code poetry, where you mix the programming language with the poetic human language expression. I'm actually quite curious, and maybe you could chat about it later, whether those things actually would work, or how much of this would execute some of the language commands, or is it just some kind of Jabberwocky visual combination? I don't know myself because I'm not a programmer, but I think it's a fascinating movement. And it has been there for quite a while, but it was very, very niche. Apparently, for some reason, it's caught up. And Stanford University, which is, well, very applied and very business-oriented, but they're also one of those places that organize poetry slams. Actually, to me, something a little bit like a game jam with a different name. And finally, poetry and something that we tend to associate with digital games. I have two examples here, and the first one is quite a famous in the ludic poetry circles, actually. Examples of a plant called Abertay. We can try maybe later on to have a look if we can play it. It's a simple Flash installation actually, but funny enough, my computer downstairs didn't have the plugin. I played it years ago, so I know how it works. And are you able to see the slides very well? So because it's quite.
Turn off the lights.
Yeah.
Yeah, should we? Will you not fall asleep? Is there something in between? Because now I don't see your faces.
We're still looking.
But okay, maybe some of the other slides will not be as dark as this one. Artoroids is an interesting one because it refers quite clearly to an arcade game from 1979, Asteroids. And it is a little bit of a mixture of concrete poetry, you know by now what that is. So you have floating letters and floating words all over the place. You can shoot the words, you can drag them. There's a lot of freedom there, very playful. Doesn't really make sense when it comes to, analyzing a certain one. So it's more like a free form commentary on what happens when you combine an arcade game with concrete poetry. Another one, slightly newer, is a poem, a ludic poem or poetic game. You can call it whatever you want. Called I Wish I Were the Moon by a Spanish game designer, indie game designer. And again, these are some of the screenshots that I took from my play session. The poetry is really minimal though, but you have 6 endings and some kind of romantic lines that are displayed in the left corner. He referred to it as actually a poetry game. I think the interpretation is quite free. I'm not sure if I would go as far. But. Right, and this brings us to the boat. And this is actually what I would like to talk to you about in a little bit. The boat is back online. I told you that the project has died a little bit in the meantime. But you can actually Google it now under boatfor2.com. And right, so I will take you now on a little journey from an idea to a game. You will learn by the end of that talk what it actually is. But first I will tell you how it came into being. And I'll start with something that I call inspiration. And a little bit of etymology, because I love etymology, I love language, or etymology, and so you have to bear with me. So how did it happen? and why inspiration? And what does inspiration have to do with breathing? So you see now. In Latin, inspirare, and you have it in the word respiratory, for instance, in English, means to breathe. And in this case, that inspiratory moment had a lot to do with breathing. So it was 2015 in the summertime, and I was in the forests of Burgundy. This is the photograph in France. And I started playing with a boat. I think, how many of you have done it as kids, or quite a few of us? So yeah, that's my boat. I built it, and was very lonely. I was there with another person, but we were kind of stuck. Had a little bit of wine and cheese, so we couldn't move on in our journey. We were driving a car. Totally unprepared, so we had to sleep in it with no sleeping bag, covering ourselves with towels. But before that happened, I built this. And while drinking that wine, I started thinking what I can do with it actually. The lake and the water of the lake was very calm that day. There were no waves, and so the boat would not move. So you can guess what happens. What do you want to do with it? What would you do with it?
Blow.
So
You blow on it.
blow, okay. I had another idea, but yes, I wanted to make it move. Not sure how much, blowing would be very efficient. I thought I will throw stones. Not the boat itself, but I thought if I throw the stones in the radius around the boat, I might create waves and actually move it. So we started throwing those stones of different sizes, and this was this is where my first idea of how the sizes of the stones might came to be, how the sizes of the stones might influence the behavior of the boat. But then something else happened, and after that little playful moment with the boat, I think I took the piece of bark as a memory of that moment. A poem came into being, and this is just a little part of it. A poem that is called Boat for Two, and it was originally written in German. So the poetry for the game was actually written in German, but then had to be translated so that more people can actually participate in it. I will not read it. I'm not the author of the poem, and I'm really terrible at reading poems. But if you want to, you can take a little while and read a few stanzas. I'll have a sip of water in the meantime. So, what happened next? An idea. An idea, as a word, has a lot to do with seeing, because in Greek, idein means to see. So hopefully you also kind of see those connections between language and the playfulness of language that we use every day, and the ideas that stand behind the words. I think almost a year later, maybe 8 months later, while I was still working in the gamification lab in Germany, an opportunity appeared, and I could have funded a little game project. And this is where I reminded myself about boat. And what I do, and maybe it's a good practice for you as designers, I don't know, it seems to work for me. I usually have a little moleskin notebook with me, and if I have an idea in a moment, and such ideas just appear in the moment, and they actually, with a lot of them, you tend to do nothing really, or you forget them. So I had that notebook, I had the idea, and months later I came back. And And the first ideas for the game were actually, I thought about those stones that I was throwing. These terrible sketches are my first attempts to think what the boat for two might be. And I knew I wanted to make a game. We had 3 months. I knew within 3 months you cannot do anything big. I knew I wanted to have the game for some mobile device. Turned out to be a game for, well, you could play it on iPhone, but I think it's scaled for iPads with slightly bigger screen. And back then I thought I would like to have a game where you literally, as you see there on the far left, you have those stones with different sizes and you throw them into water, you create the waves, and you take the boat along some kind of a path, and you have to solve different puzzles, and as rewards, you get the poems. But the poems were actually not really there because for some reason I did not think that they could be very a part of something that is a game. So that was one of the first ideas, actually quite a simple puzzle game. I will not bore you to death with the mechanics and what we thought about that. Then there were a few other ideas, and I think maybe they could be quite feasible. And one of them was based on those drawing on the right side, so we thought, why not having a boat as a metaphor on the balance in the relationship? And you would have to keep that boat in balance while you steer the boat through the different hardships, metaphorically, of the relationship. And as it is between people, you start with a certain kind of baggage at the beginning, sometimes less, sometimes more, depends how complicated you are or the other person is. So we thought, well, we could have dice at the beginning, and this would, depending on how the dice rolling would turn out, it would change. You would have more luck or more bad luck at the start of the game. So that was another idea. Then a few others that are not here, and one of them included a physical and implemented actually installation with a boat in the water, so you would have to literally push that boat and throw those stones into water, but part of the environment would be superimposed and from above and projected onto the water. That idea was great, but it died because in 3 months there's no way you can do it. So all those ideas put aside, and then I reminded myself what was actually so special about that moment, apart from the fact that we were throwing those stones and trying to make the boat move. Of course I destroyed it, you know, the strudo, that human part of existence when you really want to build something and the next moment you just want to destroy it, dark play. But anyhow, so all of those things were not essentially what we went for. So thought about the poems and how relevant they were, and I wanted to make a game where the poems would get a substantial space to unravel. Because the team, I think, well, as every team is, I missed the word in English, don't blame me, I'm Polish, and I speak German as well. Consists, that's the word. Because every team consists of people with different skill sets. It was a little bit torn into different sides, and the visual side turned out to be something that was very important. After you watch the gameplay video, and at the end we might actually talk about it, you might have your own experiences of how games turn out successful or not, depending on which side actually takes over. But we started with some mood boarding and how to actually, with ideas of how to represent the boat. We thought about having a nutshell and a fire, but then we kind of thought in some cultures this is actually bringing the idea of
Yeah.
exactly. So it doesn't seem like the right thing. It was not about death, really. So as beautiful as they And again, serendipitous moment. For some reason, at the moment where we didn't know what to do with the boat, we were watching an animated film in which two leaves were coming together. And we thought, maybe that's not a bad idea, since the whole game represents to a certain degree a relationship of two people with some poems in it. Told you it's personal. So we come up with an idea of making a boat out of leaves. These are the first sketches of the boat. This is one of the logos that you can also see on the website. Right, and then the visual side took over. So the guys on the team who were sculpting the world is a very linear experience. You are thrown in that boat. That boat is a character essentially, and you are on the river, and you have to push the boat forward. The way you do it is you have to tap the screen, and while you tap, depending on how hard you tap, you create waves, and those waves push the boat. So that's the basic mechanics of the game. And you can of course kill the relationship quite easily. If you tap too hard 3 times, you kill it. You can learn how to be gentle and make waves that are big enough to push it forward, but small enough not to kill the boat. And if you manage to do that, you get to go through 9 different worlds that represent those different moments, rose-colored glasses, moments of doubts and foggy lakes, waterfalls, and so on and so forth. So that became actually the main idea of what it is. But where are the poems in it? These are the waves. This is how they are visualized when you tap on the bottom. Yeah, poetry, of course. We had only one poem actually at the beginning of the game, and we needed more of those poems. So the poet on board, the poet is part of our team, and she composed some of the poems, and I mean all of the poems, some of them especially for the game, and some of them were composed earlier, but somehow they matched the mood, so she retrieved them from the abyss of her drawer. And I think this is where, so the visuals became more and more stunning actually, quite nice. The mechanics quite stable. We resigned from puzzles really because, and this is part of the, I guess, part of the design decision making. Which part of the game should take over, the puzzles and the navigation or the poems? So this is where we were never actually clear, and I think when you will watch the trailer and the gameplay video, you will see like that kind of being torn in between the two. So that's a lesson to be learned. It's really important to know which of those 2 factors is the driving factor for the game. So we started implementing the poems and to the game world. These are some of the screenshots from the game. This is the whole poem. I just superimposed it on so that you can actually have a look into it. But very soon, another problem turned out. So how do you actually implement that text? And how do you make a game that essentially is an alternative way of reading poetry? Because that's what it is, much more than a game in a classical sense, if there is any classical sense. So we started thinking, how do we implement the poems? And there was a lot of disagreement and discussion. And some of the poems, and this is why I'm telling you that the project is still kind of pending. Some of the poems were implemented in a way that you cannot really interact with the environment, but they keep you hanging for a few seconds, they display, and then all of a sudden you can move forward. And this, I was not a big fan of that. Some of them, like this one, appear, you can still tap and move the boat and progress, and the poem kind of progresses with you. seem to work a little bit better. This is my favorite part, probably the most ludic part of this poetic experience, because you have to actually tap the water to move the ice away and to make way for the boat. And while you're doing it, the poem starts appearing, and it doesn't appear evenly, so some of the words appear first, some start disappearing in the mist. This is how that poem called Fog-like appears in that scene. And bringing and wrapping it up, actually, you want to see what it is actually. So I'll take you to, because it's by me, I could not implement the video in the presentation. We'll watch two of them. Sound. Gameplay. This one is actually a very early gameplay video, so before the visuals were brought to like completion. So some of the shading is still not there, but the main idea is hardship and a very uninviting land. Oh, probably. Unfortunately, the video doesn't have one of my favorite parts, which is the lake with the ice cubes. There's also a cave. There's a lot of design potential that was unused, and this is where I will wrap up as and after the cave, you end up in the open sea, and this is the maybe kind of a happy ending, but it's an open ending. That's what it is. So, yeah, so now you know a little bit more about it. So, my two big points, just to end up on a kind of a self-critical note, I guess. Maybe I'll put the lights back. Is this here? I have to stop using the black background, to be honest. It's not that. It's quite beautiful on the screen, but not necessarily here. So, two self-critical comments, or design comments actually, or lessons that I've learned, and I'm not sure if they will be implemented. Poetry more integrated with the environment. So, because in this case we're dealing with something that is very old medium, very so written text. Although yes, it appears in a more or less interactive way, it still stays very much of written text superimposed onto some kind of more or less navigable space. And my problem with it, and this is where we couldn't implement it because of time constraints and none of the creative problems, more the everyday life problems of time ended, money ended, people move on, have different projects, they don't want to invest more time into it, just want to wrap it up. And I thought what would be really nice, this is what never happened, and this is where the poetry could be a little bit more integrated with the environment, is this. So that's an example of a scene. You end up here, there's a foggy lake pond, and then the next scene is you ending up in the cave. And because you are in the cave, there's a lot of echo. There's supposed to be no music. This is something that I also insisted upon. Cut like 70% of the music away. It's too much stimuli. It's too much audio. It is audio-visual anyway, so we have to take something away. So there have been some decisions where we had to fight with each other because the person that did the music was so attached to it, wanted to keep it. From a design perspective, as a designer, I thought this is not the best way to do it. But keep it where it's really significant, otherwise you lose the significance of the music because it's always there. But coming back to the poem, so I thought because you are in that cave and there is echo, those last words, not the whole stanzas of the poem, but some of those words would be really great if they echoed together with you in that cave. And this is what I meant when I talk about how to really integrate it and make it something more than just a text that is superimposed, how to bring it together with this interactive moment of playing and how to make it a little bit more powerful. This has not happened, and I'm not sure it will, but I think it would be amazing if it did. So those last bits of that poem echoing here in that cave and taking you out of the cave with themselves. The other part of self-criticism, I'd say, is poems that are responsive to the navigable space. I'm not sure if it would work, but what I mean by this is that what if you could move the letters? Maybe not always, but sometimes. What if only if it makes sense in the given scene? Because as you saw in the trailer video, the scenes are quite different. So in some of them it might make more sense because of the emotions that are actually brought in that scene, and others not. Here it would make a lot of sense because you have to move the ice cubes steps away. So what you would do physically to that pond would be actually this kind of concrete poetry. So you would try to move the letters the way you move the ice cubes. So these are just two examples of what I, from a designer's perspective, would consider, I think, a good idea of combining digital game or this ludic aspect with poetry in order to make those two into a little bit of a new form. Those two things, again, sadly, did not happen, but lessons were learned. And yeah, I should probably update it because I have something that's much more useful, which is a Twitter. So Twitter is a good thing. That's the whole team, so I was not the only one behind it. There were a whole of other people. Also, as I told you, that poetry had to be really translated from German to English. It's really amazing if you can read German. I would love to bring those German poems to the website at some point, since the project revived a little bit. And it was developed actually with the funds. So I always kind of mention it at the Gamification Lab in Germany, and thanks to the funding from that institution. And prefrontal cortex are those three guys, Paul Kirsten, Felix Herbst, and Christian Freitag, who were behind programming, interaction design, and visuals and audio. So, yeah, that's me. I really wanted to bring the game, and I was talking to the team, and I have it on a test flight version on the iPad, but because the iOS version, as usually, has changed in the meantime, they told me they cannot do it this week because it demands too many updates from them, but they will either by the end of this week or next week. So if you would like to see how it, like yourself, how it works, and maybe even give me some feedback, the iPad will be residing with me in the aquarium. It's funny that the office is called aquarium. I think it's haunting me. So it will be there in the aquarium, or if you want to have that test flight version, if you have your own iPad, just like send me an email, and I can ask them to give it to you. The last update, so what I hope, and this really, right now, it depends on that team, that technical team that is behind it. I really want to bring it to an end as soon as possible, the end of this year, and it will be for free on iOS. It's not a commercial project. But my hands are a little bit tied because I kind of depend on at least one or two people that could implement the changes. If it doesn't happen, I might actually get back to you and like plea for help to bring it to an end. Where next? I was actually thinking, okay, VR is a big thing, and I was always a little bit, it's just like everywhere. But lately it made me realize why not actually, why not really taking that idea again. I will stick to poetry for a while, I guess, of concrete poetry, playing around with it in a 3D interactive space. So if I have the chance, if you want to work on something like that, I have no money, so you would have to be just passionate about it. So give me a shout, and we can think if we can make a VR one. There's also a really great collective, Bio Collective. Have you heard about them? They're in Dundee. And I might give you a contact. You might want to invite one of them to give a talk here. Really amazing people. They are not a company. They do games with some kind of meaning, sometimes political. Killbox about drone warfare that was nominated for Independent for the help me, that festival that just took place in
Indicate.
Exactly, Indicate. It just came back. So there was a game that went from Dundee, was nominated, and just came back this week. So if you don't know about them, you have to get to know them. Thank you for coming, and I hope that your evening was not entirely wasted poetry, and I'm looking forward to meeting you and talking to you, and I'm sure you have many great ideas. Let me know if you want to do that slam code poetry thing or anything. I have quite a lot of weird ideas. Some of them might resonate well, some or better, or some of them worse. But that's me. Thanks a lot. just like move somewhere and then we talk, or what is your?
Pretty formal.
I can take the jacket off. I have a very cool T-shirt underneath, and it's a chair.
Right, yeah, thank you all very much for coming. Thank you very much to our guest speaker for taking the time out and coming to give us a wonderful presentation. Again, be sure to come back next week and the week after that, please. So sorry for the people who have presentations on the machine. Afraid we will not have time today, but next week hopefully we will have a bit of time. Try and make sure you arrive early though, because today, generally speaking, we have to wait about 10 minutes or so before we actually start the meeting for latecomers to arrive. And you know, if everyone arrived on time, we could spend those 10 minutes actually doing something productive. So, hint, hint.